Okay, so this video I'm going to discuss shoulder dysfunction. So you need to watch the normal shoulder motion video first if you haven't already, and then we can go into the dysfunction. We have to understand what should be normal before we can say, right, this is abnormal or inefficient or suboptimal. So we know the scapula. If we look at this, just let's say the scapulohumeral and the glenohumeral joint as that complex. ST joint, AC joint, we know need to be working, but if we stick to the scapula and the humerus for the time being. We know the scapula needs to be moving at its best, if we stick with the frontal plane, needs to be moving very efficiently between 90 and 120 degrees. If that's not happening, then we're putting excessive stress on the glenohumeral joint, and this is where we see most of the impingements, rotator cuff problems, etc., etc. Now, there is a lot of school of thought of, oh, if you see someone doing this and then they're pitching up with their scapula, right, then they're getting their arm up, there's a bit of pain. What we need to do is address the scapula and try and get that lower traps to fire, or the rhomboids to fire more, or serratus, or whatever other muscle apparently is not working. So if someone's lifting up, they're hitching up into this position, there's too much elevation, too much anterior rotation, lower traps aren't firing, we need to get that to work better into that position. That I don't understand, because of lots of reasons, but the main reason is, if we see someone using this strategy to get their arm up, they're trying to use their scapula to cheat the problem. So that's their way of getting out of jail. If I get them to work on their lower traps, fire them up, keep them down, whatever else, I'm taking away their cheat. So instead of a scapula that rises up and lets the arm come up, I'm now trying to keep it down into this position, bang, I'm going to lose range. My scapula needs to move. In this scenario, I've got a scapula that's moving too much to try and make up probably for a glenohumeral joint that's not moving as well as it should. So my focus should be on the glenohumeral joint. Why is that not moving as it should do, and it's asking too much of the scapula? If I then start to work on lower traps or keeping that shoulder back, round, down, whatever, I'm then taking away the cheat, which gives more problems. I'm then focusing more pressure onto the area that doesn't move very well. The pain's going to get worse. It doesn't make any sense. So if we see someone where the scapula is moving excessively, in whatever position it is the scapula the problem? In my mind, no. The scapula is what they're using to try and get through daily life. So I don't want to take away that. I want to get the glenohumeral joint to work better, so the scapula doesn't need to compensate so much. If I'm then fixing and trying to correct this dyskinesis of the scapula, I'm going to cause more problems. And it's the same thing with rotator cuff strengthening. We get this problem of, oh yeah, the arms, yeah, it's really painful when I'm coming out to this position, it's pinching, etc. Either the scapula is not doing what it should be doing, or we're not getting that relative rotation and translation of the humerus on the scapula. How does strengthening change a rotation? In some cases, maybe it could, but just, I'm here, my humerus isn't rotating down, it's not translating, I'm getting impingement. How we're doing band exercises to pull and strengthen this up, how does that change a relative rotation and a translation here if I'm doing an exercise here? Maybe it does, and I'm happy to be proved wrong. For me, it makes absolutely no sense. The problem is in the mechanics and not as they should be. We need to address the mechanics. A lot of the time you'll test someone, like, oh, they're really weak, pain here. If you get the mechanics going, oh, full strength. Have you changed their strength? Absolutely not. But we've changed the mechanics. Now the muscles can work effectively. The nervous system is happy to fire off as many muscle fibers as it needs to, and we perceive full strength, but we've done no strength training. So there can be no actual change in strength, but there is a change in firing and patterning to that muscle. that is my thoughts with impingements or rotator cuff problems, etc., etc. It makes no sense for me to try and correct a scapula that's shifting up too much, because that's a compensation. And it makes no sense to me to get a band and pull and get these rotator cuffs nice and strong if the problem is with the humerus not rotating and translating. Strength isn't going to change the mechanics in my mind's eye. Maybe it could in some, but it doesn't make any sense that if I do an exercise here to get it stronger, that's going to make it work better in terms of sliding at this position. It's a timing issue. So we need to work on that as close as we can to the problem, rather than coming down here and just, well, I'm going to strengthen them so then they can lift their arm up. How much strength do you need to lift your arm up? If it's working fine and the joints are all rotating, we don't really need a lot of strength. It's fairly easy. If we've got patterning that's not quite right, we're trying to strengthen to overcome the problem. May work short term, long term, not very good. So we have to think, where's the person's pain? How does it fit with what they're doing? Where's the compensation? What's moving too much? What's not moving enough? And how do we deal with that? For me, trying to limit how something moves because it's moving too much doesn't work. If something's moving too much, it's trying to compensate for the next thing in the chain that's not moving enough.